Again, good evening and welcome to the very first cybersecurity workshop of the Inter-American Defense Board. We have the pleasure to be here. Thanks again, my friend Lieutenant Colonel Higuera and the Inter-American Defense Board. And today, for this evening, we are going to have basically 4 presentations. We have a presentations starting with me about cyber threat hunting. The second will be with Magno Logan about security and development. We're going to have also a presentation from Rodrigo Montoro about cloud. And the last presentation will be with our friend Rafael Salema about how can you detect pivoting and lateral movement in your organizations. So let's start with the very first presentation. Let me know if you can see here. I put the presentation. Can you let me share here? Desktop. Okay. All right. I believe you can see the presentation. Can you see the presentation here?
Yes,
okay.
All good.
Okay. Just a minute here. Okay. In. All right. Nice, thank you. Okay. All right. So let's start. In our very first presentation, we're talking about cyber threat hunting fundamentals, is some basic information of threat hunting. But before that, let me present myself. I am Laios Barbosa. I'm from Brazil, by the way. I'm a computer engineer. I have post-graduation in information security. I'm the co-founder and principal structure of Go Hacking Company. Go Hacking Company is supporting this event and also supporting the exercise, the Cyber Defense Challenge. I'm a former SENS Institute instructor. I lectured there for a couple of years. I have a few certifications, is a bunch of letters in there. My background is much more about network administrator, sysadmin. I started as a programmer, but just about 2 or 3 years in there. And after that, I just have more than 15 years in terms of infrastructure and sysadmin, and also information security. I've actually, right after my graduation, I started to get this field of information security. And I'm a CTF addict, actually, by the way. Actually, I mean, I use it to play more CTF, capture the flag. I used to say, today, I have 2 CTFs in my home. My 2 kids, they try to hack me. They try to hack me every day, every single day, the whole day, and try to hack in daddy. And it is like on every father, every mother, it is like a 24/7 security operations center. Try to protect against the hacking techniques of the kids. But anyway, I'm also a player of networks, CTF of SANS. I'm a champion of champions. And in the free time, I try to be a good husband, good father, and suffer when you have time for that. If you want to keep in touch. I have Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. That's some medals and coins and trophies of my few years of playing CTF. So be free to contact me, and let's have a chat about information security and CTF if you want, right? So what will be our agenda today? In this very first presentation, let's talk about cyber threat hunting and what's the objective of this presentation, some kind of introduction. Let's talk about the cyber chain and MITRE ATT&CK, and finally about the threat hunting, cyber attack trends, threat hunting, some kind of conclusion. Here, we are not deep in dive in this subject. It is fundamentals, and my main point here, it is to give you some information about cyber threat hunting. So what is the object of this presentation is to give you some information about cyber threat hunting process, and how can you use this process, the threat hunting, in a way to help us as a defenders to protect our organizations from attackers. Can be normal attacks, can be advanced attackers, but the point is, how can you leverage cyber threat hunting in a way to improve our information security? So, introduction. First thing first, I would say, information security is basically, maybe almost of them know about the three principles or the three pillars of information security. If you keep your organization safe in terms of information security, you need to keep the integrity, availability, and confidentiality of the information. And we have the attackers, they trying to compromise your organization. They try to compromise one of these pillars, the integrity, the availability, and the confidentiality. And how these attackers can compromise your organization, compromise your system. Probably, they're looking for some kind of flaw. We call that vulnerabilities. So this introduction is about some definitions. Let us be in the same page here. So an attacker or the attackers trying to find some kind of vulnerability. Vulnerability is a flaw, is a weakness in a system, in an operating system, in an application, in a person. So that it can be leveraged by an attacker. And how an attacker can leverage that? We have the exploit. What is an exploit? Can be a technique, can be a code, malware that can be used to exploit this vulnerability. And that is how the attackers can compromise your organization, your environment. And when I say attackers, I'm going to say threat. And what is a threat? Can be an event, can be a substance, can be a person, an individual, or a group of individuals, but that has the possibility or the potential to exploit some flaw, to exploit some vulnerability. But let us make this definition better, because not everything is a threat. So what is a threat? And in terms of threat, you need to think about 3 points: capability, opportunity, and hostile intent. To have a real threat, something that represents a real threat for your organization, they need to have the capability, the opportunity, and the hostile intent. For example, if you have a threat actor, a group of bad guys, suppose trying to breach your organization. Suppose this group has some kind of capability, I mean, technical skills. They can have money, sponsor it, and they also have some kind of hostile intent, they have objective focus on get into your organization, but they don't have the opportunity. For example, there is no vulnerability they can exploit. They have capability, they have hostile intent, but no opportunity. That is not a real threat. They used to say that's an impending or an imminent threat. See, only when you have these three all together, we have a real threat. So talking about threat, vulnerability, and exploit, we'll go to the risk. So normally, information security is to deal and handle about risk. You need to minimize the risk. And what is that? What is risk in the end? Is basically probability, the likelihood of a threat using an exploit to leverage particular vulnerability. So if you have a vulnerability with a high impact, but with a low probability to be exploited, we have a low risk. But in the other hand, if you have a flaw in your system with a high impact and a high probability to be exploited, we have a high risk. So information security is much more about how can you handle, how can you deal with the risks. And putting that in more practical examples, what can be a threat? Can be A competitor, can be a not satisfied employee, can be a hacker group, hacktivists, and even government and organized crimes. And vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities are flaws in your operating systems, in database, in applications. Even a person has some kind of flaw. And put all together in the risks. In the end, when talking about risks, is risks of what? Risk of loss, sensitive data, or competitiveness, or remunerations, or the worst scenario is loss of life. When you're talking about, for example, ICS, industrial control systems, like gas stations, or some big companies that work with SCADA and ICS systems. Okay, so in the end, we're talking about threats. We need to talk about APTs. I know it's a buzzword for many years, but what is an APT? What is an advanced persistent threat? I used to say APT not to be so advanced. I mean, normally when you think about APTs, come into your mind some kind of is a very clever group of people, with money, and that they have some 0 days to exploit some vulnerabilities, but it's not always the case. No, the point is with the APT is a group of threat actors that normally they have some sophisticated process, but the main point is they are very focused. They have a very strong objective, and different from some script kid, they perform a long-term working, trying to understand the target in a way to get into and compromise the organization. And they probably have some kind of sponsor and multiple attack vectors. So they don't need to be very sophisticated, right? And the point is that APT is important to talking about here. It is the attackers are become more sophisticated and clever, and fast. And in terms of defenders, you need to prepare. You need to be faster. You need to identify and detect this kind of activities. So that is the definitions. So just to put us all on the same page. And I love to bring some context. When you're talking about attacks, it is about how can understand an attack. How can you look at that as a process? And we have two big frameworks, two big models that can work with that. We have the cyber kill chain by Lockheed Martin, and the cyber kill chain, they put an attack in 7 steps. The first step, it is the reconnaissance, the very important part when the adversary is getting as much as information as possible from the target, maybe using OSINT, open source intelligence, but getting information and try to understand their surface attack of the target. After the adversary get much information and trying to understand what is the vulnerable point, the second part is weaponization. They try to create some kind of cyber weapon. Can be a malware, can be a very sophisticated email, can be a pen drive, a USB drive, or even a call talking to someone and perform some kind of social engineering. And after the weaponization, create some kind of malware, the attacks need to deliver that. And one of the main ways to deliver that is email, phishing, spear phishing, something like that. The next part is exploitation. So if an attacker did a good reconnaissance, they can identify vulnerable servers, vulnerable softwares, and can exploit that and have the initial foothold. And after, with the initial foothold, the next step is to persistent installation, how they can persist in the environment. And the second step, command control. After the attacker is in there, persisting, moving around the network, they can control many stations or many systems, they need to have some kind of command and control of the targets. And the final step is actions on objectives. So basically, an attacker can perform all these steps to perform some kind of action. For example, can be some cybercrime with financial motivation, can be a hacktivism with ideological motivation, or sabotage, you know. So it depends on the kind of attack and your organization. You have many kinds of action objectives. And the second framework that complement the cyber kill chain is the MITRE ATT&CK. And attack stands for adversarial tactics, techniques, and common knowledge. It is basically a framework, knowledge database of adversaries' tactics, techniques, and procedures based on the real-world scenarios and facts. But the most important part is the MITRE ATT&CK comes to help the defenders to understand the phase of the attacks, the procedures, and give us, as a defender, a normal or a common nomenclature. For example, if you need to share information about teams, about countries, between teams, about some kind of new attack, how can you talk the same language? You can use the MITRE ATT&CK as the common nomenclature. And basically, MITRE ATT&CK, it is presented as a matrix. That is the matrix of enterprise. We have a matrix for mobile scenario, for ICS, cloud, but the enterprise is the most common matrix of MITRE ATT&CK. And it's a very important part. We have here, in this part, we have the tactics. The tactics is a group of techniques, and each technique has descriptions, the common knowledge, the procedures. So as a defender, it is very important to know well the MITRE ATT&CK. So we have cyber kill chain, you have MITRE ATT&CK, and have the definitions. Next steps, trends. So I like to put some more context in the attacks because it's very important in a way to defend your organization. What's going on in the world? What happened right now? And we have some reports. One of the reports that I love to present is the Mandiant M-Trends. Mandiant is a company of Google. And every year, they have this M-Trend report. That's the new one, 2023, talking about the last year, 2022. And there is a very specific information that I like to present. It is about dwell time. What is the dwell time? Dwell time is the days, how many days an attacker can persist or can stay in a network of our organization without being detected. How many days an attacker can be there in an organization undetected. That's the dwell time. And according to this report, last year, the number is 16 days. So imagine 16 days is a lot of days, you know. It's basically more than 2 weeks, an attacker in our organization doing many things, evil things, without detections. And what can be scary, it is when they started this report in 2011, the number of days was 416 days, more than a year. Fortunately, every year, these numbers, this dwell time is decreasing. Thanks God for that. And today is 16 days. That is average. But it's very important. Keeping that in mind. Keep that in mind, because the next information I'd like to present, it is about another point from another report that's from CrowdStrike, is a global threat report. In this global threat report 2023, we have something called breakout time. And what is breakout time? Here, breakout time, it is the time an attacker, an adversary takes to move laterally. I mean, from the initial foothold to get another system in a compromise another system. Now, this number, it is 84 minutes. What that means, after an attacker gets into our organization, establish this initial foothold, basically they can they spend 1.5 hours to move to another system, to compromise another system. So put these two information together, the dwell time of 16 days and the breakout time of 1.5 hours to move to one system to another. So an attacker in 16 days can basically compromise the whole company. Oh, that's an average for sure. But the main point here is the attackers are become faster and more dangerous. So in some point in your organization, you will be compromised. It's not a question of if, but a question of when. And the point is you need to be prepared. You need to have a very good process and systems of detection and response. And this process of detection response can be improved with the threat hunting process. And now we have the threat hunting. And what is threat hunting? Let's get some definitions. One of the definitions from the white paper, a framework for cyber threat hunting, from David Bianco. David Bianco is a great professional, the creator of the Pyramid of Pain model. And in that report, we have threat hunter is a process of proactively searching for the threats in your network. What is the point? We don't need to wait for some incident to happen or some alert. You can look beforehand. You can go and searching for some suspicious activities in your network. Next definition from Science white paper, the proactive approach of searching and finding threats within your organization network maybe go undetected for a long time. I mean, remember the dwell time, 16 days, right? And because the traditional solutions of protection, it is not enough to stop a little more advanced attacks. So basically, you are looking for the enemy or adversary in your network because you didn't receive an alert. Your firewall or web application firewall, your IPS, your IDS, your antivirus, the whole thing was not enough to stop the threat actor. And the threat hunting is looking for this specific guy or specific group or specific event. So the main point is we starting to leave behind the reactive approach. What is the reactive approach? Is the traditional incident response approach. If you are a part of CSIRT, a computer incident response team, you are used to deal with incident every day, but basically you receive some kind of alert, you receive an email, a third party, your CN or your file is blinking their red flag, So basically after the incident happened, you can act. But in the threat hunter, you need to be proactive. You don't need to wait the alerts. Be proactive to address the cyber attacks. Don't wait for alerts. The main point is to reduce the dwell time. Don't let the attackers stay in your environment for 16 days. And optimize, be faster in detection and response. Minimizes the incident, minimize the impact of the cyber incident, reduce the attack surface, and increase cyber resilience. Point here, proactive. And how can we be proactive? It's not simple. Say it's simple, but doing that is not simple. Let me show you how can do that, right? Here. And what are the requirements? Okay, threat hunting is nice, it's cool. How can I really do that? How can I starting to do threat hunting in my organization? I already have incident response process. I have an incident response team. I have a minimal security operations center looking for the logs and the traffic and looking for my environment. Nice, that's cool. But how can starting to be more proactive? how can I start to look and searching for the enemy and the adversary inside my network. We have a few points here. To starting to have threat hunting, you need to have first visibility. You need to understand your environment. You need to see what happened in your environment. Also, you need to instrumentation, you have technology, you need to have firewalls, IPS, CN, everything together, technology. You need to have access of information. You need to have process in place. One point is cyber threat intel. That's very important to become your threat hunting process better. And most important part, prepared analyst, the professional that is looking the whole things and have some capabilities that are very important. So take the visibility first. I mean, visibility is much more about technology, instrumentation. You need to have a bunch of information, a bunch of data, put all together in a security information event management, which is a CN. And that's the first step. I mean, instrumentation, technology, nice, that's great. You need to have a visibility, what happened in your network. But the main point is someone need to look in that. Someone need to think better what happened in your network. And that part is the people, the human resource. And in terms of people, to starting to hunting something and start the process of threat hunting, we have three main points here. First, we need to have people trained. You cannot use, I would say, a junior to perform threat hunting in an organization because they don't understand the organization, they don't understand the technology, they don't have enough skills to start in threat hunting. So training is a very important part. Analytical thinking. So normally threat hunting is performed by experienced people with some kind of experience and skills and with this analytical mind. And one of the most important part I like to say here, it is offensive mindset. You need to think like an attacker. How an attacker can, what an attacker can perform inside my network. First, you need to know well your environment. And if you, for example, if you already perform some kind of pen testing, red team activities, and if you understand the step of attacks, if you understand the cyber kill chain, if you understand the might attack, and that is a very important part because you need to think like an attacker to looking for the ways an attacker can do in your environment, looking for indicator of a compromise, indicator of attacks. So the people is one of the most important part in the threat hunting process. Next, information, data. You need to collect as much information as possible from your environment, internal or external. And in the end, we collect data, you process that in information and transform information in intelligence. And now we're talking about cyber threat intel. Cyber threat intel has some cycle. You plan, you collect data, you process, analyze, and you generate some kind of indicator of compromise, indicator of attacks, and TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. The main point here is you need to know well the threat. You need to know well the bad guys that can be a potential harm of your organization. And with the process of indicator of compromise, you can start to look in your environment. And when I'm talking about IOCs, it's very important to bring here the pyramid of pain. Pyramid of pain is a model created by David Bianco. And basically, it is a relationship of indicator of compromise. How can you identify bad guys' activities in your environment? And how can you defend against these indicators? You can, for example, you can identify some kind of malware. You can identify some kind of file, a bad file in your environment, and you have, for example, the hash of this malware. But when you block that file in your environment, an attacker can change that. If you change a little bit of this file, basically an attacker can bypass these hash protections. So it is trivial for an attacker to change the hash. The pyramid of pain is how much pain as a defender an attacker can suffer when you defend your organization. So when you block, for example, the evil IP address, it is easy for the attackers to change that. All right, you can put up the level of defense. Né? Now you can create, for example, you can block domain names. Okay, nice, but the attack is simple for them change. But when we're starting to block, for example, host and network artifacts like a registry in the host, when you identify a network traffic, when you block some kind of tools, for example, Mimikatz is a tool that can get credentials from network, from the memory, sorry. They can dump credentials from memory. If you block the Mimikatz, if you block some kind of leave off the land attacks, it's starting to become harder, and you are putting more pain to the attackers to change. The final step is change the TTPs. So the TTP is the whole process of an attack. If you can force an attacker to change that, you are very good in defense. But perform this is not easy. So that's the process of threat hunting. Try to find these indicators, try to identify, try to block them. And there is another model, is diamond model, trying to describe an attack. So basically, they help you as a defender. How can you understand the threat actors? How can you, basically, an adversary can use some kind of infrastructure to connect or to compromise a victim, and can use some kind of TTP to exploit some kind of flaw. It is another model that can help you to track what an adversary can do and how can you identify in your network these steps. Very good to understand. And David Bianco also created what's called the threat hunting maturity model. If you're starting to this process of threat hunting, in which level you are, or in which level, in what level you are trying to get. You can start in a level 0, initial. There is no, for example, routine of collection of data. Basically, there's no automation. And one of the important part also is automation of some process. And you can starting to get a better level. Like level 1 is minimal. Can starting to get some routine of collection of information, threat intel. And the main point is to getting step by step and improve your level, improve your maturity of threat hunting. I would say here in the middle, if you are procedural, you have some procedures of analysis created, well documented. We have some kind of routine of data collection, some kind of automation to identify some indicator of compromise. And that's pretty hard to follow, you know. It's not a process that you can implement in days, but maybe years, depending on the maturity of your organization. And in the end, you have some kind of threat hunting looping. And the objective of this presentation is give you some practical overview of this threat hunting looping. It is basically 4 steps. It's creating hypothesis, investigating the hypothesis, discovering new pattern TTPs, and analyze that and identify if you have or not adversary in your network. So the very first part, it is starting threat hunting. It is questioning, is creating hypothesis. And to create a hypothesis, you need to starting to make some questions. Maybe there is some kind of adversary in my network. Maybe my web service compromised. My Active Directory can be compromised, or there's some kind of persistence in there. Maybe it's a stealthy. You need to think about the threat actors, your environment, and create statements. And create a statement based on observation. And the objective is create your hypothesis and confirm and refute. And how can you confirm or refute the hypothesis. It is testing that. And what is the test? Is the hunting process. And how can you hunt in this? How can you hunt and how can you confirm and refute the hypothesis? Basically, in a manual process or automation, or you put all together, manual and automation with scripts and tools. And let's start with an example. So we are getting the final of the presentation with an example of threat hunting. We're talking about the definitions, talking about some models, cyber Q chain, might attacks, the trends, and the threat hunting process. And how can you put all together? And let's see a simple example of how to start in a threat hunting. Let's take an example of web shell. I don't know if you're familiar with, but web shell is a kind of technique of persistence. Looking here in the might attack, we have the tactic persistence. So in this tactic, to achieve this persistent tactic, an attacker can use a technique called server soft component and a sub-technique called web shell. Web shell is basically a bad file, a bad script written in a web language, like, for example, a PHP. An attacker can compromise your web shell, your web server, and put that script in the web server and interact with this script, with the web shell, and starting to perform some kind of operating system commands. And the type it is basically a command and control system, very basic command and control. So after they have the initial foothold in the web server, they can upload this file in there. It is a web shell. So considering this kind of attack, what you can do in terms of threat hunting. This part is about installation. If you put that in cyber Q chain in the steps of attack, we are the installation part. So very first part, questioning, create a question. Hey, what about, are there, maybe in our environment, we can have some kind of web server compromised. Are there web shells on our external web servers? Probably your organization has some kind of website in the internet or many applications, web applications in the internet. And the question is, maybe we already compromised it and you don't know. What you can do in terms of looking for that and see if you are compromised. Are there web shells on our web servers? And we're starting to look or observe the world, the environments, the reports. Take examples of CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agents. Looking for that, we're starting to see many news about, hey, there are now many groups, APTs, working with web servers, attacking web servers and installing web shells. Here's examples of a report of Microsoft. There is a group, a threat actor called Hafnium. They used to, one of the part of these TTPs or techniques, it is to compromise web servers and install web shells. So you need to look in your organization. You need to see, okay, maybe my organization can be a target of this group, Maybe this group can target organization like financial, maybe government, and based it on your scenario, you need to look in the threat actors and try to figure out, hey, maybe I can say I can be a target for this kind of APTs or bad actors. And that's the question. And after the question, you're starting to create hypotheses. And the hypothesis is, okay, web shell is a very important part. There's a lot of group in there exploiting web servers. And the hypothesis is, my external web server have been compromised and have a web shell implanted on the system. That's my hypothesis. So I need to compare that server with a good station, a good condition servers, and to see if my web server was compromised. And also, in complement, I need to analyze the network activity to see if you have some kind of suspicious communication, suspicious network traffic. That's my hypothesis. I considering my web server compromised, and I starting to looking for indicator of compromise. So using techniques, using tools, I starting the hunting process. So here I have some kind of web shell. There's a PHP file. There's a PHP, I would say, very basic web shell. If you're familiar with PHP, here is when an attacker accesses this evil1 PHP, they can provide this get variable. They can provide this command or CMD. They can provide some operating system commands in a URL, in a get URL, and starting to make some command in the web server. Another kind of very simple web shell using PHP is also using some kind of HTTP headers. Here, they are putting the command in the HTTP accept language header. And another one is using the method post, but before they encode the command, they encode this command with base64. So we have here 3 types of web shells. Very basic. We have others like C99, we have China Chopper. So that is just to start. We need to understand what is a web shell and how can we look for this kind of attacks in our network. So first, we can go to the server. We can go to a good stance, a good server, a baseline to understand what is good, what is normal, and take a look in the web directory and say, hey, that is the normal file that I need to see in my good server. We have this kind here. We have the PHP. We have JSON, and have a TXT. Okay, nice. Now you have an understanding of baseline. Next, you need to compare. Let's compare my suspicious server with a good server. And look in the suspicious server, you see that file here is a config PHP. Is a normal name. It's a common name. That's the way the bad guys try to disguise, deceive. And okay, is a different file. Maybe a normal file, maybe a bad one. Let's take a look on it. Okay, looking better in the content of the file, we see here very strange content. The config.php is a bunch of letters here. That's not, the content here may be very suspicious, because if you take a look in the traditional good stand server, we have like a normal PHP programming. You can look and understand what happened, but here is some kind of obfuscation, and that is starting to become more suspicious. So, okay, let's see if you have some kind of traffic, network traffic, someone from outside accessing the config PHP. So you can look in the CN, in the firewall, in web application firewall. Here, it is just a PCAP. We have the Wireshark here, looking and analyzing a PCAP of this communication. And we see here, okay, maybe we can find someone access the config.php, and we found it. In analyze the network traffic, we see a few external IP address access this config.php file that can be a web shell or not. We don't have this answer yet. And looking at that better, we can see there, okay, nice. We see some kind of access of it. That is a PCAP file, a network PCAP, but you can see that in the same way in the firewall, in the web application firewall, in your CN, okay? And looking better, what do you have here? We have a post, someone making a post in this config.php, and as a post, we have the data, the payload here in this part of the HTTP request, and we have a HTTP response from the server. And HTTP in the port 80, for example, port TCP 80, it is a clear test. Could be HTTPS using SSL or TLS, but that is HTTP clear test. But if you're looking better, there's some kind of encoding here. So the possible attacker is access this file here and giving some data and receiving some data back. That can be a command, and that it can be an answer of a command. Let's try to decode that. When you try to decode that, that is, by the way, the Cyberchef is a very nice tool. You can find that online. When I try to decode, it seems basics for encoding. When you try to decode, we still have some kind of encoding part, like a binary. So that started to become more and more suspicious. And if you're looking better and studying this kind of behavior, we can find some patterns. And after that, after analyze that, we can get the conclusion, say, hey, you know what? This kind of traffic is very similar to a very null web shell or a very null program that creates command and control using web shell. We have here the Weavely. With the Weavely, you can create a web shell and the traffic can be encrypted using some kind of a password. And that's why even using the clear test, the payload, the data is encoded or even encrypted. So after analyze that, we can get the conclusion, say, hey, you know what? That is pretty much like a Weavely kind of command control and web shell activity. And we're starting to looking better. And after you find that, after you find many indicators, after you find many information about that, you need to have some kind of partial conclusion. Say, probably an attacker and no one compromise our web server and deploy this file, a web shell, a config.php on the file system. And we have evidence, not only in the host, not only the server, but also the network traffic can give me some indicators, say, hey, that is strange. Let's looking better and deeper. In the next phase, we will analyze that better. And the most important part now is, in the end, after you have all this indicator, all this information, you need to pass that information to another team or to another member of the team to try to replicate that. They need to replicate to see, hey, let's test your hypothesis. Let's test if that is, we can confirm that or can you refute. And when you pass this information and try to reproduce, and all the team can reproduce that, we get the answer and say, hey, you know what? Our hypothesis was right. We were compromised. That is real web shell. When another teams can, using the same steps that you did and get the same conclusion, that is a strong indication that you were compromised. And now you can pass that, you can alert, and you can declare an incident and pass that for your CSIRT team. And that is the end of threat hunting. So it is a long process. You need to press that. You need to improve that, doing that basically quite often or every day, depends on your work. And in the end, it is like an incident response without the incident, without the declared of incident. We are looking in advance, looking for that. But pay attention. In terms of looking, for looking that, you need to understand better the techniques of the attackers. And that's why it's very important for the analyst has some kind of experience in this field, in the red team operations field. And we get to the end, and just a few conclusions about this presentation. As I said before, it's not a deep dive into threat hunting, but give you an overview about threat hunting. How can you perform? How can you start that in your organization? You can be you can have a small, a medium, or a big organization. If you want to start that, depending on your maturity of information security system and program, you can start that in a simple way. You can get your incident response team, a few people in there, and starting to create hypotheses and starting to look in your environment for this indicator of compromise and hypothesis. So main point here, the actors, the bad actors are getting advanced. Sooner or later, your organization will be compromised. So they are getting faster, fast and fast. You need to be faster. You need to have some kind of rapid detection and response. That's one of the main points. Because in some point you'll be compromised, and to minimize the impact, you need to be faster and detect this compromise. Threat hunting is a process to become your faster, to implement this proactivity, and to reduce the dwell time, the time the attacker stay in your environment. And that depends heavily on the human resource. It's not only technology, but the analyst, and that can be optimized using some kind of automation. So depends on, I mean, you are getting better and better in the level of maturity of threat hunting. So here is a few hints how to can perform threat hunting in your environment, and how can you improve your capability of detection and response, using different approach. I mean, be proactive and not only reactive. Okay, so I take a little time here, more than I expected, and I hope that can become clear. If you have, I see a few questions here. I try to answer. Okay. There's a lot of questions. I can try to answer that in the chat, right? Thank you for the question here. I'll try to answer. Yep. Okay. So thank you so much for that. We'll be here for the next presentations. So the next presentation is with Magno Logan. Okay. About SecOps. And let me here. Okay. So put your questions in there and we'll answer. And try to answer that. Okay.
I just need the host Laios to share my screen and video.
Okay, good to go.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, okay. Start sharing my screen. Oh, let me read the chat. Let me see. Okay. I think the chat is open for everyone now. I think you can message on chat if you want to message there. People are asking for the chat here. Okay. Let's start sharing my screen. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Hope it's okay. Yeah, okay, I'll try to answer the questions at the end as well. Okay, so yeah, welcome everyone. This is the second presentation of tonight, of the workshop today. We're gonna talk about secure coding, protecting your applications from within. My name is Magno Logan. I'm also part of Go Hacking team here. Before I start, just a little bit about myself. I'm an information security specialist. I have a background as a developer. I currently focus on research around cloud and container security. I have 12 years of experience in application security, multiple certifications from SUNS, CompTIA, AWS, Azure, and others. And I'm also the SME, the subject matter expert for the CompTIA Pentest Plus exam, where I write the questions. So if you ever taken the Pentest Plus exam, some of the questions were created by me. Okay, and this is my LinkedIn. That's the best way to reach out to me after the event. If you want to ask questions, just interact or exchange information, feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. Okay, so today we're going to cover three main things. First is the application security dilemma and kind of why it's so hard to protect applications today. And when I talk about applications in general, not just web applications, mobile, cloud, desktop, whatever, anything that you want to call or label an application, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the State of Software Security report. It's a report provided by Veracode every year, and it's really interesting to kind of gather some data there. And then as well, we're going to talk about the secure development lifecycle, the SDL. And if we have time, then I'll do some demos and some hands-on stuff here as well at the end. Okay. So when we're talking about secure coding and application security and all this stuff, one thing that comes to mind and how it's so hard to kind of understand what is application security and how it's so difficult and complex to protect those applications, right? So the idea here, we need to first understand what application security really means and kind of what are the different subfields of application security, and then understand why it's so hard to kind of protect different environments and different applications, right? So when I'm talking about application security, I'm talking about, anything that it's directly or indirectly related to application, right? So anything from security testing, secure coding, secure design, framework analysis, code review, vulnerability analysis, or library protections, right? So anything that relates to any way to protect or to increase the security of my application, right? So I really like this quote from Tanya Jenka. It's also an application security professional. She mentioned this back in 2018. Application security, it's any and all activities you perform to ensure that your software is secure, right? So the idea of protecting your software and increasing the security overall will make it harder for the attackers to exploit them in the end, right? After it's running in production. So if we try to focus our efforts in the beginning of the software development lifecycle, we can produce better and more robust and more secure applications. We also know that there is no such thing as 100% secure applications. We're just trying to make it harder for the attackers to exploit them and making their lives difficult as well. Okay. So why is it so hard to do that? We've been doing, cybersecurity, network security, application security for many years now. Right? Application security, it's a topic that I've heard since, the beginning of the 2000s or even before that, but it started gaining a lot of attention, after the creation of OWASP and other organizations focused on application security. Why it's so hard to protect software, to write secure code? Why is that? Can anyone tell me, and feel free to answer in the chat there, like the chat should be open. So you feel free to use the chat to answer this question. Can anyone tell me here today, and feel free to use Google or ChatGPT, whatever. Can anyone tell me how many programming languages are there today? Do you know how many programming languages are available? So I'm talking, Java, Python, C++, JavaScript, and Go, and Rust, and different ones. Many, right? Many. Yeah, more than 700. I think it's a little less than 2,500, Luis. The last time I checked, I always ask this question when I'm training developers and application security specialists. But the last time I checked was about 1,300, so 1,300 different languages. But of course, every day, every week, people can create more languages. Maybe this number is correct, I'm not sure. But it's a lot, right? Now, I'm gonna simplify things a little bit. I'm gonna make your life a little easier. Yes, it's a lot of programming languages, different formats, different ways, that the way that the language is implemented, if it's compiled or interpreted, there are different things that you need to take into consideration that's gonna have different vulnerabilities, okay? But just to make things easier, let's forget about programming languages. Let's talk about web servers, right? I'm talking about web servers. So how many web servers are there today? So some examples are Apache, Nginx, Tomcat, many others, right? Maybe hundreds, right? So different web servers. And each web server can host different applications written in different programming languages. So this adds a lot to the complexity of protecting those applications. When you add new things such as frameworks and architecture types and design patterns, different ways that the application can be developed, even with the same language, even with the same server, that creates a lot of variants here. On top of that, when you add things like API, cloud, serverless, containers, microservices, you can see that now, oh my God, this is getting really, really complex. It's really complicated. How do I protect an environment complex as this one, an application complex as this one? On top of that, each person and each company will develop software differently. So if I ask everyone here, let's say, okay, let's write this very small function. Let's just write a very small function and let's all use the same programming language. Let's all use Python. Just one, okay, that I use the most nowadays. Let's just use Python. And you just need to write a small function to add two numbers. Just this. Receive two numbers and add two numbers, and then give the result. I can bet you that a lot of everyone here participating on this webinar, they're gonna write the code differently, even if it's in the same language, right? The variable names are gonna be different. The way that you're gonna structure the function is gonna be different. The way that you're gonna display the results is gonna be different. So when you add thousands or hundreds of thousands of lines of code from different developers, from different people, this adds a lot of complexity, right? That's why it's so hard today to even fix simple vulnerabilities, such as SQL injection, for example, right? A vulnerability where you can send database commands through the application and manipulate the database through requests to the database, right? So even that one vulnerability that was discovered, that the first public article about SQL injection is from 1998, and we still have applications vulnerable to SQL injection today. How is that possible, right? So that's kind of the reason of this complexity and different frameworks and the tools also available today. They're not able to cover all these different languages, all the different variations of environments and servers and everything. Okay, so just to give you a perspective here. Okay. Now let's dive deep into one of the very nice reports from a company called Veracode. This report is called The State of Software Security, to understand some data collected from this report. I have some numbers and some graphs to show here. So just to give you a brief overview about this report is published every year by this Veracode. It's a company focused on application security. They are very focused on secure coding, penetration testing, code reviews, things like that. And they've published this report for over 14 years now. It's one of the oldest and largest companies focusing on application security. And the latest version of the report is already available. The 2023 version, it's available on the website there. That's on the slides. And that's the 14th version of the report. I brought a few numbers from not just from this year's report, but from previous years as well. So if we look here, right, one of the things that they say in the report, the one from I think 2020 says 76% of applications have at least one failure, right, one flaw, while 24% of those have at least one critical failure, right, one critical vulnerability. Just after they're deployed to production, just after they're first scanned by some security tool, especially the ones from in this case from Veracode, but then they have one critical vulnerability. So almost one fourth of applications have at least one critical vulnerability. And another thing that they mention in this report is companies that scan their code more frequently, right? Organizations that scan their code more frequently, they have up to 5 times less security debt. If you heard about technical debt, which is like the amount of work that you may leave behind after you try to fix problems the easier way, that adds to, okay, maybe I need to refactor that code, maybe I need to fix that problem, this is a temporary solution. This is a technical debt. The security debt is kind of the amount of security vulnerabilities and security issues that you leave behind, that it takes a lot of time for you to fix those, right? So that's a security debt. And by scanning your code more frequently, so having tools that can scan the code at every commit, at every pull request into the pipeline, helps reduce this number of issues, right, by 5 times. So that's huge. Some of the other numbers that they have here, okay, from this report, this state of software security, right? So if you leverage different technologies, different categories of application security tools, such as DAST and SAST, so dynamic application security testing and static application security testing, right? Or code reviews or code auditing. If you implement those 2 tools, right, you can fix, right? Usually companies, organizations fix those issues 24 days, 24.5 days, 24 and a half days quicker than other companies, than other organizations. Also, if you have the frequent scanning, right, that was mentioned before, you also fix that quicker. Frequent scanning meaning you have the scan into like a pipeline, automated. Every time the developer sends like a pull request or commits the code, you are always testing, right? So that's important. Another thing is static analysis through API, right? So when the tool has an API, it's easier to automate. So it's easier to implement that into the pipeline. Among other things here, the last one is using SCA with SAST, right? The SCA means software composition analysis, which is another category of application security tool that looks into your libraries, your dependencies, and checks them for outdated, if they are outdated versions, or if they have any public known vulnerabilities. Some examples of libraries that had issues recently, if you can recall, the log4j, log4shell vulnerability. It was a library, a Java library that was vulnerable. Prior to that, we also had the Apache struts vulnerability that affected Equifax and many others, right? So it's really important to also look at the libraries, the third-party dependencies that you're importing in your code, to make sure that they are up to date and don't have any public known vulnerability. Other things here, one example. So a lot of questions that I get asked is, okay, you deal with secure coding, you deal with application security. So which language is better for security? Which language programming language is safest for security. There is no such thing, right? This is the debate of the century against like Windows versus Linux, Emacs versus Win, or whatever you want to add there to the debate. That's not the right question. The question is, which programming languages am I more, more, let's say, expert with, more, what is the word that I'm looking for? More versatile, more that I understand better, that I can code better, right? That's gonna be the question for you, your developers, and your organization. It's not just a matter of one language, this language is the safest. But in this graph, we see here that some languages are easier to cause, to write problems than the others, and write high security problems, because, for example, they may allow the programmer, the developer, to implement everything they need to take care of, garbage collection, memory allocation, deal with buffers and pointers and things like that, that could lead to security vulnerabilities that are high or critical in severity. So in this graph here, in this example, we have C++, right, as kind of with 59% of applications that have high or very high severity flaws. Next, we have PHP, right? We just saw in the previous presentation from Laios some web shells created in PHP. How simple it is to create a web shell, a simple PHP code that can control another server, a compromised server through a web shell. Most of the web shells, I think today, are still written in PHP, right? Then we have .NET, Java, and others, right? So it's important to understand it's not a matter of, this programming language is the safest. Yes, it's more about, okay, which programming language can I code better, right? Now, of course, there are languages today that are kind of memory safe, and organizations are choosing to leverage those, such as Rust, for example. And yes, that's a good, I say a good example or a good choice, but still, it's not about, okay, this language is not safe, it's not secure. It's not this discussion that we should have. This other graph here from the State of Software Security Report, this one, it's great to show you a heat map. This is very important because if your organization has applications developed in these different languages, you now know which vulnerabilities are more frequent in that programming language. So let's say if your organization uses more, let's say, PHP, you have a higher chance, a very high likelihood of having cross-site scripting vulnerabilities in your code. Cross-site scripting is a type of injection. Now, according to the latest OWASP top 10, it's part of the injection flaws category, right? It's basically JavaScript injection. So this vulnerability can, an attacker can steal the session cookies from the victim. They can redirect the victim to another website. So that's a problem, right? So if you look, okay, my organization has PHP, then I'm gonna focus on cross-site scripting and cryptographic issues. These are gonna be the main ones that I'm gonna start, because these are the more frequent issues on this language. Of course, today, no organization has applications on only one programming language, right? It's many different applications, many different programming languages, different things, as we discussed in the beginning. So now you need to look at the other languages, if you have here, for example, Java and Python and C++, and then focus on the vulnerabilities of each one of those. Okay. Just a few more numbers here just to compare and a few things, and then I'll try to do some demos at the end. This is from the previous year, the last year report, or 2 years ago, actually. No, last year, yes, I think it's last year. So the number of applications being scanned, right, being tested for security, it has increased by 3 times from 2011 to 2021. So organizations are taking application security seriously, and they're trying to add tools into the pipeline to scan for issues, for vulnerabilities, not just during the development lifecycle, but also after the application is deployed in production. Another thing is the median scan cadence. So like how frequent is the scans, right? As we discussed before, from 2010 to 2021, it has increased by 20-fold. So it's a lot of improvements there. One interesting thing here is that from 2018 to 2021, the applications have shrinked in size. What does that mean? We're creating smaller applications. So if you see here with JavaScript, Python, .NET, we see declines in app sizes, right? Which means the trend towards microservices, right? Each application is their own and they function on their own, and then they communicate with other microservices through APIs, to RPC calls, gRPC, whatever, but they always have their own separate repository and own separate teams. So that's why there's this reduction in size by different applications. And if you've been in cybersecurity for a couple years now, you've probably heard of the Log4j, Log4Shell vulnerability a few years ago. This is the reason. This graph on the right side, 97% of Java applications are made up of open source libraries, right? The Log4j is a library for Java applications to perform standard logging. So when the chaos broke out during the Log4j issued at the end of the year, right? A lot of people didn't know that they had this vulnerability. Even if they had Java applications, they didn't know that they had the Log4j library inside those applications. Because sometimes the Log4j library was being called by inside another library. So let's say you have the main application here, then this main application calls one library, let's say a logging library, for example, and then this logging library called another library, another dependency, which was Log4j. So that made it very hard for organizations to detect and to find out if they were vulnerable or not by the Log4j vulnerability. Okay. Also here we see just the last slides here about this graph. We see a lot of reduction in the time to fix open source libraries, right? So we say that the world runs on open source, right? There's a lot of tools and libraries that we use that are provided for free. A lot of developers creating, interesting and important applications nowadays that are run by different organizations across the world. So we also need to take care of those open source libraries. And there is a lot of involvement from organizations, NGOs, nonprofits, and like the OWASP and open source security projects that like from the Linux Foundation to improve the security of these libraries. So we have seen reduction in the time to fix vulnerabilities, right? Because most of the time, these maintainers of these projects, they're not compensated by their work. They do that in their own free time. And we also have seen the reduction on the number of vulnerabilities on open source libraries as well, right? So we've seen that there is an effort to always improve the libraries and the open source code that you have in your application. Last thing that I want to talk about is the secure development lifecycle. So we talked about, secure coding, the difficulty and the dilemma of different complex languages and frameworks and everything. Then we cover some numbers on the software security report, which I highly recommend that you read the full version if you want more information about it. It's a very nice report. Now we're going to talk about, okay, how do I start developing secure coding? How do I teach my developers to write more secure code? So this idea is not new. It's something that was proposed a while ago by Microsoft, right? The secure development lifecycle. You can also see the acronym SDL, SDLC, or SSDLC, right? And it was published by Microsoft back in 2008, so many years ago. And the idea was to ensure that you have application controls that make software safe. Safe enough to be used within an acceptable level of risk. So as I said before, there's no such thing as 100% secure, but at least you have some controls, you have some validations and verifications in your code that can guarantee some sort of acceptable level of risk. And this program, this life cycle, it's now divided into 12 main phases. The first time was only 7. Right? It evolved over the years. And the first phase of the SDL, of the secure development lifecycle, is training for the developers. Just like what we're doing here, right? This information sharing, this knowledge sharing, it's important to train developers in security, secure coding, and security training. It's the first phase of the SDL. And a lot of developers, including myself, right, in my background, when I was getting my college degree, we never learned about secure coding. We never learned about input validation and SQL injection and cross-site scripting. I didn't learn that. We only learned to write code to make the application work, to write code to make what was expected of the program, right? We never thought about the possibilities of an attacker sending a malicious payload or a malicious, input field and compromising the application and crashing the system, for example, or taking down, a website. We never thought about it when I was learning to develop code. And that is across the board. I've talked with many developers. It's still not very common to see, trainings in secure coding for developers from the beginning. So that's why organizations need to step up, and provide that training if you want to have better and more secure coding in your applications. So here, just a quote from Microsoft, right? Software development process. What is the SDL? Software development process that helps developers create more secure software and meet security compliance requirements while reducing development cost. You get 3 for 1, right? You get more secure software, right? You meet security compliance requirements, which can be a pain most of the times. If you've done compliance, you know it. And you also reduce development cost. So it's cheaper. It's cheaper to do that. If you implement the SDL according to Microsoft, it's cheaper to develop software in this way and more secure. But of course, you have to follow the steps properly, right? You have to follow the phases and implement not just the security training, but adopt all other phases from development lifecycle, which I won't be able to cover everything here, but includes, not limited to, having static analysis, a static analysis software, right? Having a dynamic analysis, performing pen testing, analyzing the libraries in your code. All these steps are very important to build a secure coding, a secure application. Just a little bit of history here about the STL timeline. It started a long time ago when Bill Gates, when he was still the CEO of Microsoft, he published this memo called Trustworthy Computing. You can still find this memo available on the internet today if you Google Bill Gates memo Trustworthy Computing, right? Because Windows and Microsoft, they had a very bad fame, right? I know they might still have, but they had a very bad fame many years ago of having a lot of security issues. But they wanted to change that. They wanted to, okay, we need to improve the security of our applications, not just Windows, right? But all of the other applications developed by Microsoft. So what they did was they stopped the development of new features for a while. So they said, okay, let's just an example here. Okay, this team that it's writing new code for Windows, they're going to stop writing new code and they're going to learn about secure coding. They're going to learn about application security, right? How to perform input validation, how to protect against SQL injection, how to do output encoding, encryption, authorization, authentication, things like that. After that, after I think maybe over almost a year after that, they released new versions of their software like Windows XP and Windows Server with more security in mind, with more security features. They still fixed bugs, they still kind of fixed the problems there, but they were always mostly focusing on security. And then as we can see here from the timeline, new protections were developed to improve the security of those systems, like data execution prevention, DEP, address space layout randomization, ASLR, all were security features introduced after the developers went through this secure coding training and this focus on software development lifecycle. And then other things happened, and after they proved that this model worked inside the organization, inside Microsoft, this is mandatory for now all developers working for Microsoft, but then they share this framework with the community, right? And they share this, you can see on the website there's a lot of information available as well around this topic. So this is the idea, right? Implementing to have a secure application, right? To deploy secure coding, you need a lot of steps. It's not just one tool, it's not just one person, right? It's the whole process, the whole organization. I know it may sound a little bit of cliche, but when we talk about security, we usually say, oh, security is everyone's job, right? So in the organization, yes, everyone needs to be involved and focused on security to make a better and more robust application. I think that's all I had to share today. How am I doing on time, Laios?
Very good, very good. I mean,
okay.
Less than 1 hour.
Good.
We are on.
Do I have more time to show something, or?
Sure, absolutely. Okay? Go on.
Okay, sounds good. So let's do a quick demo here. So you may ask me, okay, Magno, yeah, this is great. You presented a lot of, interesting things, but how do I start? How do I start doing secure coding in my organization from a practical perspective, right? So for example, if you can see my screen here in this GitHub repository, I have a vulnerable application on purpose, right? It's a purposely vulnerable application that we use in our trainings and our workshops as well. So there, and I'm just using GitHub because it's easier to kind of understand, to visualize it. But okay, what can I do today, right? If I want to start checking my code for security. Let's say that this code has a lot of vulnerabilities, right? This is the repository of the code. And as I said, I'm using this GitHub as an example, but you can do similar if you have like other repositories, if you have GitLab, if you have Bitbucket, whatever. The tools are going to be different, but the purpose is the same, right? So for example, for public repositories, for open source repositories on GitHub, there's something that you can enable for free today. So if you have a public repo, you can enable something called Dependabot, right? So let me show you here. I go to the security tab here on top, and then I can say enable Dependabot alerts. What's that going to do? That's going to give me the results. The Dependabot is going to scan the libraries in my code and then check for, if they're outdated or if they have any public known vulnerability. So let me update this one, Dependabot alert. So I'm going to enable it here. Enable. So, and this is free for open source, any public repositories, right? And right away, after I enabled, Dependabot is going to do, it's going to scan my code, my libraries for vulnerabilities, and not just the direct libraries, but also the indirect or transient libraries. So in this case, this is a Node.js, a JavaScript application. How do I know that? I can see it here from GitHub, the languages. And here are my libraries, right? In this file here, the package.json, I have a list of libraries. See here, these are the dependencies. So these are the direct dependencies imported from this for this application. So for my code to work, for this code to work, it needs, I think it's about 31 libraries to import code from other people, from other developers here. Besides those libraries, we have many more other libraries that are imported as well as indirect dependencies. So what Dependabot does, it checks each name here of the library and then the version of the library, and then it goes to a database of vulnerabilities, right? The database of vulnerabilities can be like NVD or the National Vulnerability Database, or it can be a database like a proprietary database for an organization. In this case, Dependabot uses the GHSA, the GitHub Security Advisory. So going back to the security tab, I can see now that the Dependabot alerts are enabled, and I can view the Dependabot alerts. So I see that this application has 133 vulnerabilities, right? A lot of them are critical and high vulnerabilities from different packages. And then what needs to be done here, right? Before running this application in production, I need to address those issues. I need to fix those libraries and probably update the version of those libraries for each of these vulnerabilities, because if they are exploitable, right? So let's say there is a way for an attacker to compromise this vulnerability through my application, then I have a problem, right? I have a problem similar to the log4j issue. I have a problem similar to the struts 2 issue as well, the library that affected Equifax. And Dependabot tells me, okay, this is the affected version, this is the patched version. So if you patch to this version, then you should be good, right? So most of the time, then for SCA, Dependabot is a software composition analysis solution, then you need to update the library to the latest version or to the version that it's patched and without a vulnerability as well. Another thing that you can do here, and it's free again, from open source or public repositories, is set up code scanning. Code scanning is the static analysis solution from GitHub, right? So to set up code scanning, it's going to use an engine called CodeQL, code query language, and it's going to query my code for vulnerabilities. So it's a static analysis, right? So now I have SCA from Dependabot, and I have static analysis from code scanning. So here from code scanning, because, okay, this is disabled. Okay, no problem. Enabled, let's see. Allow actions. Okay, I think this should be okay. Let's go again. It's not enabling here. Okay, well, let me show you in a different repo. It's fine. I don't know why it's disabled here. Let me show. Java Goofy, I think this one. Okay. Okay, code scanning is enabled on this one, just an example. So here we have the code scanning results. And this one, we can see that there is a building a command line with string concatenation. So after the code QL, the scan run, oh, this, you see, this you're building a command line, right, with string concatenation. So you're getting this string here, and then this title.txt here, and concatenating, and then you're running a command line. You're running .exec, right? This could allow you to could allow an attacker, if they have control of this, could allow attacker to perform command injection attacks, right? To run commands inside the server of the application where it's running. So you can see here that the rule that was found, and you can also see the recommendation and how to fix the problem as well, among with other references. So now we have, in this example right now, we have Dependabot and we have code scanning. It was simple as that, just to click the button here and then enable it to improve the security, right? The code of our applications. Of course, this is only available for free for open source or public repos. Otherwise, you have to pay, but also there are other solutions, other open source solutions that you can leverage if you're using another source code management, like besides GitHub, if you're using GitLab or Bitbucket, or if you need something else, if you need a specific language as well. So this is how it's very simple today, just to show you to start implementing, some sort of secure coding and application security. It's very simple to start doing that today in your code and in your organization. Okay, so yeah, that's all I had to share. I don't want to take too much time, and I'll be available on the chat, try to answer all the questions. Thank you, everyone.
Great. I don't know. Você tem que passar o host, né?
Okay.
Passar o host.
Yeah, 1 second.
Tem que liberar o vídeo? Não sei se você consegue liberar o vídeo para todo mundo.
You're the host now, so.
Thank you.
I think, yeah. Let's see. I need to turn off. Okay.
Great. Hello. Okay, get back. Okay, thank you so much, Magno, for the presentation. It was a great presentation, and covering very important aspects of security coding. And for our next presentation, so before that, let me give some information. We have many questions here about, for example, the presentation. Probably that is being recorded. This video will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. We put in the chat the address of our YouTube channel. So after that, after the event, you probably get the video uploaded there. And in the description of the video in the YouTube channel, you're going to put the PDF, the presentations. So maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow, we upload the video and upload also the presentations, okay? Okay, nice, very good. Okay, let me put here the panelists. Okay, the next will be our cloud guy here. All right. He's getting to the panelist. Okay. Right. So before to put here our next speaker, just more information. We have some questions about the exercise, the cyber defense exercise. So that is the part of the bigger event. That's the workshop. We are not give you much more information about the cyber defense here. Basically, we're going to give you more information with an email or in another opportunity. But the main point here is to share some information or give some information or knowledge about cybersecurity in general in many areas. Of course, that can help you in the exercise as well. But the details about the exercise will be given in appropriate moment. Okay. Yep. Don't worry about it. It will be in 2 weeks. And don't worry, you receive the information. Yep. So enjoy the information, enjoy the event here. It is not too much, but the intention here, our main goal is just that, just giving more information, knowledge in cybersecurity. And okay, the next speaker, our next presentation will cover the aspect of cloud, which is a very important part in the organizations and the IT scenario today. So let me put Rodrigo Montoro here. I'll put as a host, and you have just a minute here. Okay, fine. Montoro, you are the host now.
It's all right. Could you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, cool. Let me share my screen. All right, all set. Let's go. Could you see my screen? All perfect. Everybody
Yes.
seeing my nice Go Hacking Las Vegas t-shirt edition.
Nice. Very good.
All right. And so thanks everybody for having me here. And we're going to talk about some defaults true of AWS shared responsibility models, where I try to explain some basic things that some problems we face when we're handled with AWS. Doesn't matter if you want to or not, it's there. And so my name is Rodrigo Montoro. I'm head of threat and detection research at Cloud Security, and I'm instructor at Go Hacking for Blue Team and cloud stuff. And I live in Florianópolis. If you Google for Florianópolis, is an island in the south of Brazil. Very great place to visit. I'm author of 2 patent technologies for my previous research. I used to speak in different conferences, mostly in Brazil, but a couple in US and Canada. And when I'm not on the computer, I try to be a good dad and husband. And in the past, when I was half of my size, like when I'm in person, it's easy to figure out that I could not run anymore. But I used to do triathlon, and I do the full Ironman twice. And the motivation behind this talk is if you look for some reports, some statistic, you see like there is a bunch of problems when you're running cloud. Doesn't matter if it's AWS or other clouds. I used to spend my time looking at AWS, so where I have more knowledge about that. And those numbers are from the SNEAK reports. 8% of the organization experienced cloud security incident during last year. If you look on the kind of organizations, doesn't matter the size, because it's all about CPU, data, and they don't care about the size. And so if you look like you have enterprise, startups, public sector, small and medium business, mostly startups, especially because most of startups, they just go to the cloud, they need to do something that works fine, and so security is not the the first problem for them. And so after some time, they start spending money on security. So it doesn't matter the size of your company, the over permissive access, like 9 of 10 actions permissions that you give to some user, they don't need and never use it. And so the over permissive is a huge problem. I think in any cloud provider, I could say like using AWS, that is pretty common. And the over permissive problem, like most of the company don't have the visibility about the user and access. And this is kind of the problem. Because like now the perimeter is a public API, and when you get some user password, or most of the time some key leaked, like there is no perimeter, like you just get access to the account. And most of the time, like over permissive policy, it's a huge problem. And besides that, there is a lot of misunderstand about the shared responsibility model. I was in a conference that we went to some cities here in Brazil, and like there is a research from Microsoft for Azure that time that 94% of the companies are moving to the cloud because it's more secure. And so that's a big mistake, right? It could be more secure, but by default, probably it's not. And you have a lot of new problems get around. And so the motivation here is to explain that. And besides everything, I was at Cloud Secure podcast with Ashish. And if you don't know the podcast, there is a lot of good talks there and presentation subjects and about all the providers and cloud at all. And talk to him, I was doing research about AppStream. AppStream is a service at AWS. And he came with an idea about uncommon service. Oh, so you're looking for uncommon service. You're looking to do some incident response on uncommon service. And I figured out, okay, I think now I know what I'm doing, because I'm a researcher and I was doing a lot of things. And I probably don't have the right word for that. And so when I talked to him and start to about this uncommon service, I started to figure out, okay, there is about an uncommon service for the providers. And I start to be a kind of more pessimist, because I start to look at some numbers about like how many detections a cloud security posture management has, how many detections we have for monitoring, these kind of things. And the numbers are pretty, I will not say bad, but compare with the amount of service that we have, it's very small. And like if you look like for some open source CSPM, and we have around like 380 servers at AWS, and open source that the last time I checked, the look at more servers, it's not 100. And so we have a bunch of opportunities here. And so the motivation is all about that. Like we need to figure out like how we could mitigate problems, understand the problems, because as a defender, we must understand that we have the problem, and if we could prevent or maybe monitor or maybe disable or this kind of things. And when you move to the cloud, we have now all the former problems, right? We have the application problem, the code problem, as Magno showed before. We have infrastructure problem. We have the awareness problem. We have all that thing that we need to take care. And we have 3 new problems, right? We have the service misconfiguration. We have the IAM permissions, the over permissions, and you have the monitoring part. And the monitoring part is pretty tricky. The permissions, as I mentioned in the reports, showed before that there is a bunch of over permissive everywhere. And we have the server misconfiguration, where we're giving more focus here, but we have these 3 problems here. And with that, my agenda here, a very quick introduction about the AWS ecosystem, the default design, like a bunch of things that AWS is doing some things to get it better. And the data plane, that's a huge problem, especially who handles with incident response stuff. That most of the time we miss a lot of eventing logging, and that's a huge problem for us. The cross-account part take care about what kind of permission you're giving to your partners or service or whatever you're hiring, right? And some conclusions. So the AWS ecosystem and the control plane, where we handle all the infrastructure modification, we create something, you delete something, we use something, right? And so we have the shared responsibility model. And so it's pretty clear, like AWS responsibility of the cloud, right? And so about the storage, the hardware, the availability, the networking, it depends a bit, like if you're using infrastructure as a code or a platform as a code, right? Function as a code. And the customer is responsible secure in the cloud. So what do you have there? Your customer, you need to make sure that you handle the right permission to your customer. You need to do the firewall configuration. You need to make sure that nothing is getting public. You need to make sure you have encryption. You need to make sure that you have encryption in the trafficking, server-side encryption on your files, and the identity and access management. And so if you do the lift and shift, usually when you move to the cloud, like the Scientia Institute, like you keep around 92% of the responsibility. So depending how you move to the cloud, you keep a lot of responsibility. Mostly you're using another data center, right? And if you're looking AWS in numbers, we're talking about 385 service. The last time it was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that I updated the slide, and it's pretty, like sometimes some servers are born and others, and it's not common, like, but some ones are killed by some reason. But like since reInvent is getting closer, probably like we'll get more than 400 for sure, like until the end of the year. And what is pretty interesting, like you have a lot of permission that's really critical, that you could close your accounts, do whatever they want in your environment, privilege escalation, delete your data, access your data. And what is interesting here, like it's keeping growing and growing, and it's growing almost every day, new actions, new permissions, new policies, and when you have new service, more actions, more policies, and all this are in your account, and that's what you need to know. Like everything that starts at AWS, if you don't do like some service control policy, some SCP, and you deny some things, what is the default that use everything? It's all attack surface for you. So doesn't matter. I don't use this service. Do you deny the service? No. So it doesn't matter. It's there. Like it's like a computer with 385 applications there. It doesn't matter if you use. If there is a flaw or there is a way of abuse or there is something related, it's there, and you are going to be abused by that, but maybe. And if you look, like it's pretty intense, the amount, the new actions that appears, like depends like how you use the policy. Like you could be adding more and more actions to some user that's there, like since like a year ago. Maybe this user, like that day that you add that policy managed by AWS, it has like 1,000 actions possible. Maybe now, a year after, maybe it has like 1,200 or 1,200. And so it's pretty intense. It's pretty hard to follow, and it's pretty important to know what you have running, what you want, and what to do the correct architecture. It's make the life more difficult, because it's never easy. And as I mentioned, the new perimeter, right? And so you have a principal. A principal could be a role. A user could be like some SSO with your Google Workspace, with your Office, and there is no more perimeter, right? It's all about public key APIs. If I have a key, I will just point to the AWS configurer, and so I will connect to the API that's public. Doesn't matter if we're going using Tor or anonymous proxy, it will be accepted by default. And so you connect in the account, and based on the permissions, you have the actions and on the resource you have. So that's why it's very important to take care about the permissions, to make sure that you give the right permissions, because it's your responsibility. It's not AWS responsibility. AWS, by the end of the day, they don't care if you give administrator access to everybody, right? Because it's not their responsibility. For sure, they don't want you to be racked or something else, but it's your responsibility to manage all these permissions. And there is the policy flows, and it's really important to understand and to see the policy, because like there is some resource policy in special that if you give a permission, you could make something public and they don't need like some key to have access to that. And so the policy flow it's pretty interesting to understand, but it's not our main goal here. Like we have a training at Go Hacking that we spent like 6-7 class just talking about AWS, the flow, and everything else. So it's very complex. But a very important point, so talking about like, because as I mentioned, we have 3 problems. Like you have the IAM, the permissions problem, we have the monitoring problems, and we have the misconfiguration. We are going to get on the misconfiguration on the next slides. But here, all the things like I connect and I run something, like I create an instance, or I create a user, I create a key, and this is logged. Doesn't matter if it came from AWS console or using some application as Pacu, CloudFox that using the SDK, or using the SLI itself. Doesn't matter. It will be logged at CloudTrail. And so like if you need to monitor the control plane stuff, like I create something and this are being used, and I attach a policy or this kind of things, it will be logged at CloudTrail. And talked about the misconfiguration part, what I think is the most interesting part, because it's the default, right? Doesn't matter like if you don't use it, right, you're not figure out about that. That's the correct word. And like if you're using EC2 or S3 or just creating user, there is a bunch of defaults that are not the most, I could say not the most secure way to do that. AWS has a lot of fix, but they didn't change to defaults. And here I just share some idea that I have. What I did here was, okay, we have a huge market for cloud security posture management tools, CSPMs. And I started to figure out, why do you have like that amount of fines? And if I just create something or my account is pretty small. That's where I started to figure out, okay, let's see how this stuff works and how the misconfiguration starts on my account. And so I create an account and like I add the administrator user, the basics, and I start to look, okay, what kind of problem I have just with that? Like I just created with the root user and I add administrator, right? It's pretty common, the very, very basic that everybody probably will do. And so I create the user. And so we notice that we have some IAM problems, some CloudTrail and Access Analyzer and regions. We have more fines if we're running CSPM. I just picked what I figure out is the more important part, in my opinion and experience. And so the very first part, MFA is not enforced to the root user and administrator access user. And so it's pretty important that user that has a lot of permissions, you must enforce MFA. And I know that AWS, they released it yesterday. I don't know exactly, somewhere next year, and they will enforce MFA for root. You must have. So at that day, I will need to change my slides, right? And for administrator users, it will not be an option for now. But what you need to take care here is when you enable MFA, you enable MFA for the web console user and pass. Usually what leaks is not the user and pass. Usually what leaks is the keys, right? Usually you go there, you create a key to that user, and that user starts to use the CLI or use some tool, use Terraform or something like this, and use the keys. And there is no enforce to use MFA for the keys. And so if your key leaked, doesn't matter if the key is for a user that has MFA enabled, could be a regular user, administrator user, it doesn't matter. The key, by default, there is no enforcement through MFA. So it's really, really important if you have a over-permissive user, like if you give to your DevOps guy and this kind of thing, make sure that they need to enforce. So you need to change the policy and enforce manually. Like there is no way, like for example, for Azure, they have the, I forgot the name, conditional access. And so you could enforce, but here you need to change the policy, create a custom policy and enforce, like you need to ask for MFA. And so the key will ask for the MFA too. Or maybe you could use the data center and use MFA, and so could make the life easier. And the most interesting parts about using SSO since the beginning, not using the IAM users, and that Identity Center, the SSO users, they are short term, right? And so like in 12 hours, you're not going, that key, then 1 to 12 hours, those keys are not supposed to work anymore. You could configure that. Like when you create keys at the IAM users, the keys are long term. They will never expire unless you revoke or delete, right? And there is no password policy, and the administrator access, as I mentioned, there is no conditions. I really suggest if you have a user with administrator access, you add a condition. MFA is one of them, but I always suggest to use source IP, like have some Bastion roast or some VPN and make sure that, okay, this key should be used, but just if you came from this IP and have the MFA. So when this key leaks, somebody try to use, they are not going to use, right? Because you have to conditional and you make the attacker life difficult. And so like you lose the game, but you win the championship because they cannot use, right? So CloudTrail, by default, CloudTrail saves the information for 3 months, 9 days, but just on the dashboards, the regular dashboard, that you need to go like region by region. Today, I think there is 32 regions, not all enabled by default. But it's not good when you need to do some incident response. It works. You have the information there. You could export, right? But it's not the best way. Axe Analyzer finds like the most important part, like it finds like you share something with external entities. And share something with external entities could be like you make something public. And it not works for all the servers, but the important part here is free. It's one of few things at AWS that's free. And so since it gives a lot of information and a lot of good catch, like it should be enabled by default. Like if you don't use it, you should. And region mostly enabled. So you could, like it's pretty common crypto mining, they just try to use regions that's usually not being used, because usually if they're not being used, we used to not look at those regions. And so what I did after here, I have a user, and so okay, I will add a EC2 instance. It's pretty common, right? It's the next step, and probably most of companies, they have EC2 instance. So I add a EC2 instance, and so I start to okay, we have some network problems, we have some instance problems, and we have some possible scenarios based on the defaults. Now, so the network problems, all the instance start with a public IP, right? And so we start to have maybe a attack surface that probably we don't need, right? I know that by, I think in February next year, Amazon will start to have some fees about having a public IP, a valid public IP. So I don't know if they're going to change and like the new machines were not going to use a public IP since you're going to need to pay for that. Maybe going to change, but I'm not sure about that. The security group that it's the firewall for the instance, and the outbound is allowed to any, like you could like try to connect to a reverse shell in any port and it's going to work. Like doesn't matter. Oh, what I do a reverse shell to a port 22123. It's going to work because by default the firewall, the cloud firewall security group are enabled by default. And when you create some Linux or maybe Windows, the administration port are usually open to any, and so that's a problem. Like you still need the pen to access. By default, the user doesn't work, user and pass for Linux for at least, but it's an exposition that you probably don't need, right? In the instance part, the EBS, that is the hard disk, encryption is disabled. If you think like, okay, like nobody's going to steal my hard drive from AWS data center, probably not. But the problem with the EBS, when the EBS is not encrypted, when you do some snapshot, the snapshot is not encrypted by default. And the snapshot could become public. And so this becoming public, anyone could access and have a lot of fun. There is a talk at DEF CON 2019 that I think is Ben Morris, the name of the speakers. He find a lot of public snapshots, EBS, and other things, and start to mount and find a lot of things. And the talk is really, really interesting. Oh, the metadata v1 is the default. Like, unless you are using Amazon Linux, like they changed the metadata v1. The metadata is where we have all the information cached, what includes the credentials if you have a role attached to an instance. And when you're using metadata v1, you just point like from the instance or from the application that you have maybe a server-side request forgery or something else, a flaw there, and you could point to the metadata P and retrieve that information and use that information, because as I mentioned, there is no perimeter if you don't configure. And so you could use from anywhere. And so they released the metadata v2 that kind of protects you a lot of things, especially server-side request forgery scenarios. But by default, it's not used. If I'm not wrong, there is a Datadog report that they checked that 93 or 97% of instances are not using metadata v2. It's a number that's scarce. And so events are disabled. Your events are for using CloudWatch is going anywhere. So you don't have like those visibility. Operation system updates is your responsibility. Is another device that you need to take care, do patch management, vulnerability scanning, and all that things. And it's a hardening. It's more paranoid. The key, right? The pen. When you create an instance, you need to use a pen, right? It's the key to access the instance. There is no password by default. So like use your OpenSSL, add a password to the pen, and make the attacker life more difficult when the pen leaks by some reason. Then you need to have the password too. And the possible scenario, as I mentioned, the server-side request forgery if you're running some application inside the EC2 instance or these kind of things. And the key paraleak, like I have like in a previous company I worked at, there was a flaw in a Jira, and so that the pen tester got the Jira, and some developer attached the key at the Jira, and there is all the information. He could access the information. If there is a password, and the password is not a ticket, right? It probably could be avoided, like as we probably lost the game, right? Because we have access to the pen file, but we win the championship because like he needs to discover the password. And by the end, what I have an administrator user, an EC2 instance, and I just add a bucket, right? S3 bucket. It's a pretty common service, right? In the bucket, we have like some data plane problems, control plane problems, and some buckets hardening stuff. The data plane, right? This is a huge problem, especially like when you handle with incident response. All the access, like when you get a file on the S3 bucket, it's a get object. When you add a file to the bucket, it's a put object. When you remove a file from there, it's a delete object. Those events are data events, right? It's not the infrastructure, it's not the control plane. And by default, all the access to information inside the bucket are not logged. And so if you want to log, if you have like some sensitive data in your bucket, make sure you enable your logging. Because when by some reason somebody access that's not supposed to access there, or maybe it's get public, right? And when it gets public, a lot of people could access. You could not do the incident response because there is no logging, right? You never know who accessed the data, who would change something in this kind of thing. And on the control plane, this was changed. Block public access by default. The block public access is enabled. Doesn't matter what you use it, right? The only point here, like make sure that the guy you are creating the bucket, the permissions to disable that is not there. So you need to make sure about this. And the pre-sign URL. The pre-sign URL, like you have a bucket, a private bucket with a private object inside the bucket. Like when you want to give access to some, it's a feature that a lot of companies use. It's pretty cool. But when you want to give access, like for a short period of time, like for some specific time, you pre-sign a URL. And so when you pre-sign the URL, you're having like a huge URL without authentication on the URA. And so you give this URA to everybody that it's on the time frame of the you set, like 10 minutes, an hour. I don't know exactly how long it could be. It will click and download the file, right? So, but this could be really dangerous because the pre-sign is an operation that occurs on your local machine. Like it's not like happening on the AWS side of things. And so what's happened? It's not logged, right? And combined with this, the events I disable, it could be a really interesting point to exfiltrate data and nobody knows what's happened because you just sign, give to anybody, just download, and they will never know that's happened. And so that's a kind of way of exfiltrate S3 data in a stealth way. And SSL in transit and versioning to protect against some answers that doesn't encrypt the previous version. That could save some times. There is better options to do that, but this could save, but it costs, right? Because when you keep like versions, you keep like different, you need more space, right? And so the main idea here, like we're just looking like on a user, admin user, and two very common service, S3 and EC2. And the main idea here, like make sure that you understand the service you have. You look to the problems you could have, or maybe the CSPM is not looking to the service you are running, and maybe you need to do some research. Because as I mentioned, like around 30% or less of the servers has CSPM checks on most of the product. Maybe some commercial product could have more, but I don't have this information. But it's still a huge number of servers that there is no the full configuration that could open the gates for bad things, but you don't know if you never research. And just some quick more details here about the misconfiguration. The VPC endpoint, the resource policy, like when you're using VPC endpoints, you're figure out like, okay, I don't want my traffic go outside and come back. That's the default of using the public API. You use the VPC endpoint. It costs a lot of money usually. And what happens? Like your data is just internally on the AWS, right? What's the point here? Like when you create a VPC endpoint, you by default the resource is star, and the resource star means like any AWS resource for that service that you are trying to create a VPC endpoint. That's a couple of hundred of them, and the point is this could be on the attacker account because the attacker account is inside the AWS too, right? And so there is a nice talk at, I don't remember the name of the guys by head now, but there is at Sense, like using a VPC endpoint for data filtration, this kind of things, that has some samples that how they get inside something that's not supposed to filtrate data, but they could just filtrate to their account. And so I am using managed policy. You don't have conditional and the resource is star. So usually it's over permissive by default, right? And there is no protection, no guardrails for that. And you have no control, right? If you're using region only, like region only is updates like week by week. And because new service, new actions, they need to add to region only. So if you want to make sure that the user has the permission you want, right? So make sure that you create your custom. It's harder to do that for sure. But if you want stuff more secure and more control about that, you must have more work. And this is a old sample that they monitor and so like the support service role add like S3 get object for support, right? So, and at that time, this policy could access any object in your S3 buckets. Doesn't matter if you have 1 or 1,000 of them. And another interesting point, it's by design, you could enumerate all the service that accounts have running just using the account ID. And so you have the account ID, and so by default there, I'm not going to explain it so in deep because it will take some time, but by the end, like some service, you could add some relationship with some principal, and the principal could be in another account, and if this principal do not exist in another account, it will say, okay, this principal do not exist, and so you could enumerate things in your other accounts. And the service role that the service creates is a common name, and so you could enumerate the service. And so enumerating the service is pretty interesting because you could see like if they're using like security rub, guard duty, organizations, all the things, maybe you have to take more attention when you're trying to do something because they have a better knowledge and a better maturity related to AWS. And so there is a tool that's quite real to AWS. You'll probably find the GitHub. This is pretty fast, like in seconds to give you this. And talking quickly about the data plane, like if you pick some very common servers, S3, RDS, AKS, the Kubernetes, the API logs are not enabled by default. Why you're not enabled by default? Because you need to point where the information is going. You probably have some cost. And so by default, it's not enabled. And there is a bunch, there is this article from Matt Fuller that he has a list of service that the login is not enabled, how you are going to enable. But the more important part is the service that you are running, it's important to have the logging because you need to look on the information when something bad happens. Like it's not one or two, three times, a couple of times, like we handle incidents that is related with RDS that we have no information about how that happened, which user did that, like drop the table or delete something. And so it's really, really important to know your service, know how to enable, especially if you have some important information there. And relates to the buckets, it's pretty common to have buckets, public bucket. And what I thought it was funny here, like this from SIGA. However, there is no indication on malicious third party access the sensitive data. And I don't know SIGA, I don't know the people there, but if you don't monitor or care about your buckets being public, you probably not enable that event, and you're probably not seeing everything, and not having the login to see what's happened there, right? And so like there is no indication. If you no logs, no crime, right? And so it's not lying, but I don't believe that they have the data, but it's just my opinion. And there is the gray hat warfare here. And if you go to greyhatwarfare.com, there is an API with a lot of buckets information. This, I think there is a new update. The numbers are close, but like on the last time I took the sprint was like 355K open S3 buckets. That's a lot. And 11 billion files, like with all those buckets. So it's pretty common stuff go public, and a lot of times, a lot of information leaked. You think like, oh, they get a lot of access. No, it's just a public bucket. You just go run sync and you have all the information. It's pretty trivial. And the cross account part, it's pretty common, like you give access to partners, products, then it doesn't matter. And basically you have your account, and your account, the other account create a role that have a trust relationship with your account. So you assume a role, it will give you back some temporary keys, and you configure the keys, and based on the permission you gave to this role, this account could do something in your account, right? And there is some quick history here. I don't know who uses Splunk, but in my previous company, we have Splunk users. And one day I just asked the engineer, the Splunk engineer, what's the permission you're given to use the Splunk AWS app? And so he just sent me the documentation from Splunk.com website. And so I just look and say, what? That something seems that's not too correct. And so I start to look like how I could talk to them, and I thought they were at Bug Crowd, I think. I don't know exactly. And so I just opened a ticket there. And so talk to her, blah blah blah. And so there was this URL. And so there is a bunch of things. There is a get object to all the buckets. There is a assume role to all resources. And so any role that you have, probably I could assume, right? There is a bunch of access to your keys at KMS. You could manipulate SKS stuff and all that things. And so this was scary because, okay, it's just a scene that I want to get the information and provide some output there. There is no need about all the things. And when I sent to them, they asked me that. The documentation state clear that the policy is sample. They'll say, okay, the website of the company is a very good place to put a sample that's incorrect, right? And so remember, it's a customer responsibility. So it's the exception, right? This is a responsibility over responsibility here. But by the end, and they just remove it. And that time there is around like 15K installation or that application. And I asked them to advise, because you probably create a Splunk user with too much permission in your account. But I don't think that's happened. But at least, like I looked yesterday and I didn't update here, but there is no all input in your file. So at least I saved the next ones, like to have this over permissive stuff. And the read-only access is pretty common to a company ask, oh, no, just give me read-only access. And it's not only the read-only access. It's much more than that, because read-only give you a lot of access to information that you probably don't want they know about that. And I did this blog post at Tempest side channel. Oh, Lord. I did this blog post, sorry about that. And so I mapped at that time 41 actions that get object is one of them. So when you give read only, you're giving permissions like the company could look all your S3 buckets, for example. Lambda get function, when you do lambda get function, you can get the environment variables, and you could get the code of the lambda. So I don't think you want a partner want that, unless you are giving permissions to somebody else to analyze your lambda code that you probably don't need. And so describe instance is pretty common that you add like some permissions, some post installation stuff with confidential here. Dynamo, you could scan DynamoDB information. You could look out the Cloudflare stuff and a lot of more things. And if you run the side channel, it's there. The information is there. The read-only access bad use everywhere, and so like the Wiz, Wiz is a $10 billion evaluation company. They are insane in cloud, and so like 82% of the companies give third parties like access to all their cloud data without knowing, right? Unknowingly. And I could not say these words, but it's huge. It's huge. And like Chris Ferry, he did a nice project. It's here, Prime Harbor, and he mapped a lot of actions that give information, and especially I'm listening here, the data access stuff. And so if you look here, there is around, I think, 150 actions that give access to data on your environment. And so sometimes you want to give read only, but to the auditor, for example, just to check your things, but you don't want him to see. And so you add this on top of that read only, because it will deny, because like what is important here, the deny came first. Doesn't matter if you have like 100 of allows, like if you have one explicit deny, it will deny the actions. And just to finish, I just go to Google and look for some products that ask for read-only permissions, and I just look until I fit the slides. Like some Tenable ask for read-only access, Site 24/7, New Relic, Out Cloud, DV Cloud. Some minors deny here, but I don't believe people use that. Cloud Dockets, Hava.io, and Cloud Craft. And so these are samples that I found around. I'm not in a specific order, or probably there is a bunch of more, right? And it's pretty common to ask for read only. So if you don't know what to do, maybe you want view only and security audit, this kind of thing that is not going to give access to a lot of data stuff. And just some conclusions to finish. Make sure you understand your default configurations. It's pretty important, like there are a lot of problems, and it's really important to know the problems so you could protect or maybe get ready for something, right? Validate cross-account and partners permission. It's especially because you could not make sure that the partner has the security that you want. So make sure you give the right permission, you control the access, this kind of thing. I know like some samples down here in Brazil that Lapsus get inside the company because he first get access to a partner, right? So like sometimes you have some huge problem, not because mainly not your flaw. For sure that part of the problem is yours because you're giving too much permission, you're not control the access, but this kind of thing is not mainly yours, right? Know what you have running, make sure you know what you have running, especially to permissions, monitoring and misconfiguration. Find your knowledge gaps, like it's like almost 400 servers. There is no way to know about all of them. And keep researching, improving detections, right? And make sure you train your team. Like it's really new to everybody, for offensive part, for defensive part, for editors, to anybody. And so like make sure you're training correctly, properly, everybody. So more people train it, more the probability about more success is much bigger, right? And here are my contacts, my LinkedIn, my Twitter, my email. Feel free to contact me. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much for this great presentation, Rodrigo. I believe the next and the final presentation will be with Rafael Salema. You can send me back the host.
Yeah, I need to figure out how to give you back the rules.
Don't worry.
Make host Laios Barbosa.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much again for this great presentation. Rodrigo is one of the experts, great expert on cloud. And cloud aspect is really amazing and scary, you know? And that is just the top of the iceberg, I believe. Now, we had a question, I believe, few questions in the Q&A. You can try to answer that. And for the next presentation, let me put the guy here in the panelist. Okay, nice. Just a reminder, this event, this presentation, it is being recorded, and we will provide, or we will upload it in our YouTube channel. So if you didn't have the chance, so go there to our YouTube and looking for go.hacking, and you can subscribe. And probably tomorrow or until Friday, we will upload this presentation, this event with the slides in there, with the PDF of the slides, no? And okay, so if you have any questions, please just use the chat or Q&A. There are a few questions about, still about the exercise. So just to make sure, we'll give more information about the exercise. Don't worry about it. And but as we have a few questions, before to start the next and final presentation, let me show you a few things about the exercise, the platform. We're going to use a platform from GoHacking. The GoHacking has a unique and special platform to provide the cyber range and the exercise. So let me show you here in just a few. Okay. Here is our YouTube channel. So we have many presentations here. Almost of them in Portuguese. Sorry, it's Portuguese, but we have a few in English, and please subscribe, get some information there. We love to share information, and please support us, and let me know if you have any questions about that. Probably until Friday, we will upload this presentation here about the exercise. So we have a portal, we have a special application here. It is GoHacking Academy. And for the all members, for the participants of the exercise, unfortunately, the cyber defense exercise will not be open to the public, just for the members of Inter-American Defense Board. But maybe in the future, maybe soon, you can open to everybody, right? But just a very fast and quick presentation here. That's Go Hack Academy. It is our student portal. So when you get in here, basically we have some trainers here, we have CTFs. In the CTF, for example, we have an example here. That is one of the CTFO exercise. Again, the cyber defense exercise is not a CTF, it's not a competition, it will be different. Will be about cooperation and collaboration, but it's still, we will be working in a team and basically in some kind of incident response aspects. You are doing some kind of analysis, you know, and normally in our exercise, you have some kind of background history. You know, you put some context, have some explanation, and the exercise itself, we're going to see, for example, here is in Portuguese, okay, but for the exercise will be in English. That is an example of an exercise you are providing for some of our clients. And we have some parts here for the questions, you know, we have sections, and for questions here, you have hints. I mean, you cannot be stuck it, you know, you can, if you're stuck in the process of answering some questions or solving some problem, you can get hints to advance. You have many questions like multiple choice. You have for example, strings or numbers, you know, characters, the traditional flags, and it is a very fun environment, a very fun exercise. And the main point here, the objective is not the competition, but the learning process. We have many levels, starting with, I would say, easy level and go to the hardest one. So after you answer the questions, you open more questions. And in that exercise is very, very important to work as a team. We have some kind of connections. I mean, if you need to deal not only, for example, add facts, analyze some kind of files, but also you can connect using a VPN to an environment that you can also test some red team capabilities, like a pen test or something like that. But almost of the, I will have the scoreboard, and also we have a chat for support. But almost of the challenges, it is about defense aspects. Is, for example, you as a team, as an incident response team, you need to deal with an incident. So probably you're going to analyze a lot of log files, PCAPs, forensic artifacts like hard drive image, you know, memory dumps, and so on. So it is a really nice environment and a very specific, and I mean, we create that with the objective to improve the teams, I mean, in a way to develop the capability and the skills step by step. You know, starting with the easy questions and easy scenarios, and go to harder one and work as a team. So, and please, if you want to know more information, send us an email. We have an email of Go Hacking, treinamentos@gohacking.com.pr, and that is just a few information about the CTF. Not CTF, but the exercise. Okay, nice, good. Okay, so for our last presentation and last speaker, we have here Rafael Salema. It is one of the structures of Go Hacking, responsible for the part of malware analysis specialist. Is a malware analysis specialist, actually doctor, PhD. He has great knowledge about that, by the way. And let me put here as a host and start the presentation. And just remember, this presentation is being recorded and will be uploaded now to the channel. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Great, great. Well, just me adjust a little bit of the adjustments here, but we start right now. Hope everybody is not that tired. We have some last talk. I promise not to be that boring. So let's go, guys. Let me share my screen. 1 second. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to present my research today. My name is Rafael Salema Marquez, and I'm a cybersecurity researcher. Today, I will present a novel flow-based statistical pattern recognition architecture to detect and classify pivot attacks. I know it's a big name, I know, but in other words, it's a new approach to detect and classify pivot attacks. In a specific type, it is a specific type of attack used by skilled cyber adversaries to circumvent connectivity restrictions imposed by network topology or defense solutions, okay? When you try to circumvent connectivity restriction or like bypass on a firewall, probably you need to pivoting using some machine to pivot, some device to pivot your connection. Okay, so let's go. I will use this agenda to guide the presentation. Firstly, I will introduce myself. Then I will provide a quick overview of the work we did, highlighting the main contributions and explaining the methodology, the architecture used for detect and classify pivot attacks. Following that, I will present the achieved results and a proof of concept in order to show that this approach is feasible. And I will wrap up with a brief conclusion in the end. Okay, so I will start my presentation with my background. It's fast things about me. My name is Rafael Salema Marquez, also known as Swank, and I identify myself as a malware enthusiast. I love malware since I was a kid. My journey into researching malicious code dates back to the late 90s. In addition to being an academic researcher focused on APT detection and attribution, I currently lead a red team, and I have been contributing to academic journals and to the cybersecurity community with talks, publications, and new techniques related to malware, okay? And additionally, I regularly conduct 2 trainings at Go Hacking. The first one is related to reverse engineer and malware analysis. And the other one is related to developing artifacts to support red team operations. So let's make some context. The number of advanced persistent threats, APTs, groups increased over the years, guys. Just like new attacks and vectors, as well as the complexity regarding adversaries, techniques, tactics, and procedures capable of evading detection patterns and defense solutions. Okay, APT are very effective. APT, we refer to APT as a set of systematics and continuous hacking processes targeting an entity to recover and exfiltrate high-value information. So APT groups are incredibly efficient in achieving their objectives. So APT use pivot a lot. It's a technique widely used by the APT actors to enable connectivity from the initial access when, for example, some people click in a phishing file and they infect the machine. We call this as a foothold, the initial access of the attacker. Probably they don't have connectivity in enterprise networks to the target, to the knowledge he wants. Then the attacker will need to find a way to access the target node. So in other words, this technique expands the restricted access of a compromised device to reach the main target using traffic routing techniques. Okay, that's the subject we are going to talk today, how to detect this kind of attack and how to classify it. So in cybersecurity, we used to say that there are only two kinds of computer networks, those that have been hacked and those that are yet to be. So experience shows that it's just a matter of time before a motivated and skilled opponent gains access to the network he targets. In this context, the pivot attack detection is relevant because it is widely used technique that permeates various APT attack stages. And effective detection of pivot attack is essential to model a solid defense strategy. So it's helpful to identify ongoing attacks in their initial stage when the opponent has not achieved its goals yet. Okay, so this introduction made will define some concepts to level the knowledge of the audience. Firstly, we will define a byflow. A byflow is the name, as the name suggests, is typically refers to a flow or a movement that occurs in two directions. In the context of network security, flow-based analysis often refers to the examination of network traffic patterns and the identification of anomalies or suspicious activities based on the flow of data between different networks entities. This can help to detect potential security threats. Okay. Byflow analysis does not require deep packet inspection. The deep packet inspection is it's a type of analysis where the defense side needs to see what data is going into the packets, what is the traffic. So this is bad when we are talking about privacy. One of the advantages of the byflow analysis is that it fits nicely in networks where privacy is essential, like military networks or some traffic that use sensitive information. And then we don't need to know what data is being transferred to achieve detection in this approach. And another advantage is that if the attacker is using some kind of cryptography, doesn't matter for us too. we can achieve detection of pivot attacks. Okay. So let's define what is a pivot attack in our context. As you can see in this picture, a pivot attack in the context of network security refers to a technique where an attacker gains unauthorized access to networks and then uses a compromised node. We call this node as the pivot node to forward commands to other nodes within the network. For example, one attacker in the internet compromised one node we call pivot node, but he intends to access the target node, but he doesn't have access to the target node. He's in the internet. But he can access this pivot node, and this pivot node can access the target network, the target node. Okay, so the attacker node, the aggressor, will use the pivot node to make an indirect access to the target node. Okay. Well, we have the following scope to perform detection. So we defined some standards. We intend to create a practical solution that could become a competitive product to enrich the actual threat intel of large enterprise networks. This is important because when we are trying to solve problems of this nature in big networks, it's kind of hard. We don't make it distributed, we don't have scalability in mind. So we try to provide valuable and on-time information concerning pivot attacks in early stages, independently of the network topology and the cryptography used by the attacker to protect the pivot tunnel. So we create some standards, right? A pivot node can have, for example, 2 or 3 pivot nodes, and we call it a pivot tunnel of length 3. So we have 3 pivoting machines device helping the attacker to pivot, for example. So big lengths is hard to detect because it takes a lot of computational effort in some techniques. Previous one. Then our approach, we did the detection in different stages in order to achieve scalability. Then we will talk about it in a few slides later. But it is important because if we don't make it distributed, it will be not possible. We identify compromised device supporting ongoing pivot attacks, okay, in simple and complex interconnected networks, like internet, for example, where the attacker is in the internet. We try to address privacy preserving. So our approach is attached to the privacy and scalability, as I already said, to detect and classify a pivot attack. And we do not require previous training or knowledge repository. So we don't use machine learning here. Okay. Next. We have some constraints defined. We are assuming that the adversary is not subverting traffic. So our algorithm can perceive all the traffic. Okay. Regarding the methodology of pivot detection, in this diagram, we have a pivot scenario illustrated, and the bullets represent packets flows between nodes from 1 to 4. Generally, the pivot technique is used when the attacker node cannot exchange information directly with the target node. Okay, the attacker node can't talk directly to the target node. And then a pivot node creates an indirect connection indicated by the red bullets 5 and 6. So to achieve connectivity with the target node, the attacker node needs to gain access to other networks, assets that we call pivot nodes that have access to the different networks, which are used to forward traffic between the attacker node and the target node. Okay. A pivot attack must respect. This is the main idea here, guys. It's a very important concept. That the pivot attack must respect a logical sequence regarding communication flux. For instance, the flow corresponds to bullet 2, pivot node outgoing traffic, to target node incoming traffic, will only exist when flow 1 reaches the pivot node. Using this, we can assume that the flow 4 will exist after the flow 3 arrives at the pivot node when the target node sends traffic to the attacker node. Okay, makes sense? Another intrinsic pivot characteristic observed in the communication flow is that flows 1 and 2 will always happen before 3 and 4, with a small time difference between them regarding packet perception by the pivot node. This is important too. So these patterns I just said, point out, will help us to detect related traffics that are in the same pivot attack. Okay. And this image illustrates 2 scenarios. The first one on the left, we have scenario 1, which is a pivot attack pattern, while on the right, we have a regular traffic pattern. The classic pivot exhibits some patterns to represent the bflow start time, while T0, I don't know if you can see in the image, T0 represents the starting time of the bflow, the flux of packets. And the T1 represents the final, the bflow end time. As you can see in the left image, the flux, the attacker node and the target node bflows have a similar start and end time. While in the regular pivot attack, regular not pivot patterns, unrelated bflows, they tend to have different start time and end time. Another important stuff is if we order the packets of the involved flows by arrival time, there is a trend for the alternation of the packets belonging to different flows. So this trend does not happen in regular and unrelated traffic. Okay. This looks these patterns, with those patterns, we can detect a pivot attack. Okay. So the detection strategy is composed of two distinct data processing phases in the detection and aggregation. The phase one, we use a host-based approach to address the detection. In this phase, the algorithm we call APIVADS, the detection algorithm, is the name APIVADS comes from Adaptive Pivot Attack Detection Scheme. We install agents to collect traffic in the device, and it collect headers of the packets and create bflows. Then it process them using data reduction and statistical techniques to infer a pivoting or pivot attack. Secondly, in phase two, a distributed approach is used to aggregate the pivot attack detection information. The distributed approach is essential to address solution scalability in huge networks, like I said. Then the agents concentrate the detection results in a machine that aggregates the results and infer pivot attacks of any length. So this is the threat model overview. When a pivot agent detects a pivot attack, it reports the event to a third-party CTI framework, as we can see in phase two, which aggregates all pivot attacks events to identify connections among the messages and infer the complete pivot tunnel. They can connect pivot attacks, related pivot attacks. So we can identify that the pivot attacks are part of the same attack. In the data collection module, we have inside the pivoting, the agent, several modules. We have a data collection module, a data extraction module, and a filter that we made a big data reduction. We discard bflows that present that doesn't have relation with each others. And we have an interaction module. All of them are important to create detection, to achieve detection. When we detect something, we send the results to the CTI framework that aggregates the results. Okay. It's kind of condensed information here because it's a bit complex, the interaction with those entities. But in the paper I will provide in the reference, you can have details on these interactions. Okay. Regarding the classification, pivot attacks can manifest differently because the attacker must adapt pivoting TTPs according to the network defense and topology. Okay, a high degree of connectivity provides more possibilities to the opponent regarding TTP when compared to restricted scenarios. So people in the internet and the industry tend to classify pivot in a binary way. Pivot attacks proposed by previous authors are proxy pivoting or VPN pivot. This is kind of limited in terms of definitions to express complex pivot attack scenarios. So, for example, I don't know if you guys know the S-Shuttle project, which is a transparent, this is the definition of the project, right? Okay, it's a transparent proxy server that works as a poor man VPN, forwards over SSH. Doesn't require admin, works with Linux and Mac OS, support DNS tunneling. Okay, this guy is a good example of the lack of granularity of binary classification. For example, some variations of pivot attacks can achieve full network access regarding specific protocols and ports over the target network using a transparent proxy, like I show you in SS Shuttle. This guy cannot be classified as VPN or proxy pivoting. While it presents VPN characteristics, since it can forward every port of a specific protocol on an entire network, on the other hand, it uses SSH protocol to forward traffic. Okay. So in order to classify, we have a table on the left to illustrate the classes of pivot. We created 5 classes of pivot based on the connectivity achieved by the adversary. For example, class 1, pivot is a scenario where the adversary achieves connectivity to a single host and is limited to a specific network protocol and transport layer, IP endpoint, for example. As you can see in bullet 1 and 2 in the table, we can, this example 1 and 2, it represents a class 1 pivot. The diagram, the pivot node can access a database in the target node on the protocol TCP and the port 2306. Differently, a class 2 pivot refers to a pivot scenario where the opponent achieves connectivity to a single host and is limited to a specific network protocol and IP. However, the attacker can access different ports regarding the transport layer. Okay, this can be exemplified with bullets 1, 2, and 3, where the pivot node can access a single node in different ports in the same protocol. When we have a plus in the table, it means that more than one, okay? Class 3 is a pivot scenario where the opponent achieves unrestricted connectivity to a single host regarding the network and transport layer, regarding IP and protocol. And class 4 is when the adversary can connect to a different host, but is restricted to the same network protocol. Finally, class 5 is a pivot attack where the opponent has unrestricted access to the target network. Okay, it's similar to a VPN, when the attacker has full access to everybody in the target network. Regarding results, guys, 4 tests and experiment scenarios were conceived for comprehensive evaluation. Okay, the virtual scenario was employed with virtual machines in a single host without network problems like delays, and the idea here was to test the implementation and establish parameters, while in the real scenario was used to observe actual networks issues, such as latency and in packet loss. Then firstly, we implemented APIVADs, and then we tested in real scenarios where we have real network issues. Then we made a delay scenario, intentional delay, to observe if the algorithm can achieve detection when facing network delays. We will see that network delays are bad for detection when we are talking about pivoting. And lastly, the stage inference scenario, we focused on identifying the probable stage of intrusion in accordance with the cybersecurity chain. Okay. So this is the real scenario. We used computers worldwide spread. The attacker node was in the UK, pivot node in the US, the first pivot node, the second one in Brazil, and the third in the target node was in Netherlands. So the idea here was to make a pivot of length 2 and detect it in the pivot node 1 and pivot node 2. If we have, the idea was to check if there are differences between them. Okay. We had a good results. We achieved in real scenario networks nice metrics, as you can see, near 99% of true positive rate, less than 1% of false positive rate in both pivot nodes, and near 99% of detection accuracy. When we included intentional propagations, delays, then we had a bit, the APIVADs had some difficulty to detect it, but in the end of the day, not that bad, but still good one metrics of detection. This is the idea here is to show that this guy works. I will show detection. I will make a pivot using SSH from a Kali machine to Alice using Bob. Bob is the pivot node. Okay, so this Kali machine is trying to access Alice, which is the target node, and the Bob will be the pivot node. Let's go. I'll show you. This is one is Bob, is the pivot node. Just showing the IPs. This is the target node. Now we will show the connections we have right now. Okay, just some UDP, nothing important. Now we are creating the pivot node. This is important. We are using SSH-J to access Alice through Bob. Okay. Now we are inside Alice using Bob to forward connection. Okay, pivot is being used. We can see it here. Okay, this is Bob. You can see the connections from the Kali machine to Alice. Bob is forwarding. Okay. Alice is receiving connection from Bob. Now we will start a pivot in Bob. Bob will have a pivot agent. We use the shark to collect packets and to do the statistical calculations. I coded this guy in Golang. So this is the agent. He's trying to infer package. The packages are arriving. We will send some comments to Alice. And package start to come. Okay, I think this is sufficient. So 2 ls is enough to detection. Now we have a pivot detection here, guys, as you can see. The more the attackers send data, more fastly we will detect it. So, in conclusion, guys, our pivot attack detection approach relies solely on information extracted from packet headers within the access of detection. This allows each device to monitor its own traffic, identifying pivot attacks patterns without the need for additional information, promoting scalability. The detection scheme can set specific parameters to sense particular changes in pivot traffic, aiding in the inference of APT changes in attack stage. It helps to the cybersecurity situational awareness of a computer network by identifying nodes involved in a pivot attack in real time, even across the internet. And our implementation showed high detection metrics in the experiments, even when exposed to peer-to-peer protocols like BitTorrent. BitTorrent can be difficult because very similar, the traffic pattern very similar to pivoting, which exhibit behavior similar to a pivot attacks. And other authors couldn't detect when BitTorrent was involved in the traffic. I hope you guys like it. This is the reference for you guys if you like to go deeper in this pivot attack detection. What we did it with details and parameters and techniques. And additional details can be found in this publication. However, due to the time constraints during the presentation, we won't delve into the finer details, okay? Now, if you guys have some questions, I will be happy to answer them. I see in the chat.
Just a few questions, we already answered that.
Okay. Okay, great. So that's it. Thank you guys for your attention. Thank you for your time. I hope you like it.
Okay, you can send me back the host.
Okay. I don't remember how.
Tem que
How do
clicar
I?
3 pontinhos ali, ó.
Mhm.
Transferir o host, tem 3 pontinhos lá na minha tela.
Ah, não tô vendo. Peraí.
Make host.
Ah, okay. Make host.
Okay, great. Great presentation from our friend Rafael Salema, doctor, PhD, right? And it's a lot of information. And this is it. This is the end of our event. Unfortunately, and I would like to say, and we love to share information. We love to be here. Thank you so much for the participation and for your time here to be here. Thank you for the opportunity, right? And we have this again. This event is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. Okay, and we hope you enjoy this event. Unfortunately, maybe the next time we'll try to speak in Spanish, maybe. I don't speak Spanish. Yo no hablo español. Yo no hablo español muy bien. Yo hablo portuñol. Es un poco diferente. Perdón por no hablar en español. Pero muchas gracias por participar en ese evento. Esperamos verte pronto en el evento futuro. And muchas gracias. And again, thank you so much for your time. Before the final words, before to end this presentation, to end this event, we'd like to give many thanks for Inter-American Defense Board for this opportunity, for provide this event for the whole community. Go Hacking company, it is focused on the Brazilian community, but we strive to give more information from the Latin American, and it is a great pleasure to be here. So the final words of our host, Lieutenant Colonel Higuera. Let me pass the host here. Okay. Good to go. Yeah.
Hello, I'd like to thank you in the name of the Inter-American Defense Board for the workshop. Was, I think, a deep presentation. We starting from the beginning and conclude with a high level study for our friend Salema. So, but I would like to invite you also, all the members, to our next event. You'll be the same kind of event like that, workshop, now with Google. So I'd like to put, you can access the link or you can scan the QR code in order to sign up for our next event, okay? It's 10, October 10, and you'll be so good as today. So many thanks for Go Hacking, and I would like to see that you in our Inter-American Cyber Defense Challenge, and I hope that you can help to improve the cyber resilience for our hemisphere. Thank you, and good night for everyone.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you, everybody. Muchas gracias. And we'll see you soon, the next event, and in the Cyber Defense Challenger in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.